Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Today we're going to talk about lean customer experience and how companies of all sizes can continue to deliver valuable customer experience regardless of their stages of growth. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Robert Du, partner of CapFeather Global and co-author of Lean CX, How to Differentiate at Low Cost and Least Risk. Robert, welcome to the show.
Greg, thank you very much for having me. It's pretty good to be in such an esteemed company of people that know a lot about CX and know a lot about lean processes. So it's nice to be here.
Wonderful. Well, looking forward to talking with you. So why don't you start by giving a little background on yourself and what you're currently doing?
Well, as you said, I'm one of the founding partners at CapFeather Global. We work to help companies who've stalled improve their customer experience so that they can grow. And right now, some of the projects that we're working on, we're helping a national removalist firm reinvent themselves. They want to have an ongoing relationship with their customers rather than just kind of being chirped, called up once every 7 years when someone moves house. We're also working for a residential aged care charity to access alternative revenue sources. Right now, they rely on government funding and they'd like to work out how to be a bit more direct in what they're doing so they can be a bit self-determining and protect themselves against the inevitable budget crunch that COVID's bringing. We're helping university implement a platform for students to provide tier 1 to support to each other to reduce their support costs. So that's kind of cool, helping students hack the university system with each other. And then maybe the most weird thing that I'm working on right now is my PhD's in cognitive psychology, but I have my first degrees in physics and mathematics, and I've got a coding background. So I'm trying to teach a chatbot with AI how to use hypnosis to help salespeople get better conversion in complex sales. So pretty broad background, if that helps you.
Nice. That's great. Well, hey, that hypnosis talk, we need to do another show about that topic, but first things first. So let's start by we want to talk about Lean CX today. So let's start by defining what we mean by Lean CX. So why don't you define that for the audience?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, and this is our definition, which we kind of get. I guess it's nice to be able to start the definition because we invented it, but Lean CX is the process we use to help companies find a way to innovate and grow, particularly when they're in a crowded market. If you think about most markets that exist right now, they're either already oversupplied or they're going to be. Now, how do we do that? How do we help companies grow with Lean CX? Well, we combine applied customer psychology and design thinking, and we add that into the lean startup methodology. And what we're trying to do is find an improvement in both the top and the bottom line. Now, unlike a lot of the other CX management approaches that probably, the listeners to the podcast know, we're not talking about improving customer satisfaction. We're not trying to, reduce friction or do cost reduction. It's really about finding a profitable niche in that crowded market. And that's what we call an adjacent market position. So it's a level up from customer journey management, which is a bit tactical. So a really easy way to describe that is if your business was a bakery, well, you already know how to bake bread and you know how to take an order for a kid's birthday cake, and you probably know what gets people in your store, all right? Right. And there are lots of bakeries out there who can do that, But here's the interesting question for you: is what about the customers who won't even come into your store? Could you be the bakery, for example, that offers gluten-free bread, or could you be one that specialises in catering the adult birthday party? Or maybe people come into your store because they like how you're helping the local community school make sure that the kids have got lunches and stuff. Lean CX is about finding that cut through that can scale. It's the nearby market segment, and it's the evolved customer value proposition, the AMP, if you like, or the adjacent market position. And Lean CX is the process to get there.
What are some of the challenges that larger companies run into that cause them to get to a place where they're not able to be lean and do what you're talking about?
The two biggest challenges, I think, we would call them language and risk. Now, I'm going to talk about the risk one first, so let's start with that. Large firms become large because they develop a kind of corporate immune system that protects them against risk. One of the guys that I wrote about this, Les McEwen, did some talks for Google, and he wrote a book called Predictable Success. Really great framework about how companies get to there. Really like that. So the problem is, avoiding risk is a good thing, right? But if something's good, then more of it may not be better. So in large companies, you see they set up stage gates, they have approval levels, they need business cases and market analysis and tech feasibility assessments and many other bureaucratic things that are about avoiding risk. But in practice, all that happens is they effectively stop anything new getting done. And I'm sure everyone's been in a company that's kind of like this. Lots of times we're victims to this kind of stuff, particularly with public services. They often have really big problems with this. So it's like the organization's so concerned about getting an infection from something new that they can't leave their protective bubble, and they're isolated from their customers. So the lean alternative is really powerful because it's a different way of dealing with risk. It's faster and it's cheaper. And it's like getting a little exposure to build up your immunity before you kind of go outside and run around and risk taking on something new. So that's kind of the risk problem. The second issue is a language problem that I think that many CX managers use. If you think about how corporates work, they make meaning out of their world in numbers. So you have to be able to show that your customer experience is not a cost center, but that it's a profit center. Now, this is a really weird thing, right? Because most CX managers wouldn't see themselves maybe as a profit center. Okay, they might see themselves as a support function. So we believe that you have to have an investment mindset where you can prove how a measured risk in improving your CX creates both a top line and a bottom line result. Now, the higher that you go in a company, the more layers typically there are between you and the customers, and the more the conversation becomes strategic and less tactical. So it's not about this touch point, it's about what are we going to do. And our experience is many CX professionals struggle deeply with the idea that for others in the company, the only reason that we would do CX is to make money, when they kind of feel like it's actually the right thing to do, right? You should just do it because it's a moral imperative. And that means they don't start out with the fluency in this kind of language of net present values and competitive advantage that really matters. They can learn it, but they often still seem like they're foreigners to the exec team, and that they come into that conversation with a kind of accent, right? And so what we think is that it's that language gap, where we're all trying to do the right thing for the company, but it just looks different at different levels, and it's a human focus. If you're in CX, it's less than a numbers focus. So risk and language, we think they're the biggest barriers.
So kind of a good segue there, talking about measuring success. I mean, so you're mentioning the dollars and cents. You're also mentioning the customer satisfaction and all that. How do you think an organization should look at success and measure it in terms of, a move to a more lean CX?
Yeah, how to measure this kind of success thing is a really great question, and I would love to have got this beautiful package and tie it up in a bow and hand it to you and go, ta-da! The problem is there's not really one neat answer to this question, so we try and look at it at a level up. So our meta-level way of thinking about this is to start with, okay, how do you normally measure customer experience? And your listeners would understand we've got three kind of measures. We've got customer effort score, satisfaction, and net present value, right? Now, each of these corresponds to something that you're trying to achieve, right? So if you're trying to do simplicity, then you're going to be measuring effort score. And that's great as a hygiene factor at scale, but there's no differentiation from that. Everyone can make it simpler, right? So then the second thing is, You want to measure satisfaction, and that's great. Satisfying CX is really great because what you're doing is you're comparing the experience that you're delivering to the customer's expectation, right? And sadly, we often see that expectation management's easier than satisfying delivery, right? But let's not go there. That's a conversation for another day. Then we're back in the hypnosis place there.
Right.
NPS has been really successful as a measure because it actually gives you the only chance to measure surprise. So an 8 out of 10 for NPS is probably a 10 out of 10 for customer satisfaction. So what's a 9 or a 10? Well, that's when you surprise the customer. And we like surprising customers in a good way because then we get referral, right? And that's ultimately what we like our customer experience thing to do maybe, right? The problem with customer effort score or satisfaction or NPS is that they ignore costs and revenues, and at best they're an indirect proxy for return on investments. So we've kind of got this in the middle halfway house that I want to suggest to you, and it comes out of the lean startup stuff that Eric Rice talked about, which I really liked. And you've probably heard of the pirate metrics by McClure. Have you? Not Troy McClure out of The Simpsons, the other McClure. I love the pirate metrics. Right? So acquisition, the first A, we're trying to attract new customers. Activation, onboarding them to get to revenue fast. Revenue, obviously, getting them to choose better and more valuable experiences because that's better for the company's return, helps us be more profitable. Retention, keeping our relationships so customers become repeat customers. And then referral, doing stuff that's remarkable enough to share to other customers so that we can attract new customers to have a relationship with. Now, the links between traditional CX metrics, the pirate metrics, and return on investment, they're always situation specific. So sure, customer effort score can reduce your friction, and that might be great for activation. How does that translate to the bottom line? That's the kind of success thing that you've got to do. NPS is way more relevant to referral, okay? But both activation and referral are much easier to link to the top and bottom line financial results than just trying to go straight from, say, NPS or CES or SAT. So yeah, it's not a neat answer. We normally look at those three kind of levels, and we normally try and start with that pirate metric as what are you trying to achieve, and can I connect that? How to do it better is the kind of traditional CX side, and how to turn it into financial results. That's kind of the rest of the language you need to get your initiatives supported.
Let's go into a couple real world examples here to illustrate lean CX. So as a B2B example, when we talked prepping for the show, you mentioned an example about packaging and craft brewers. Why don't you go into a little detail about that and talk about how it was effective?
Really compelling for us is that about 2/3 of economic activity is actually B2B, not B2C, right? But often the media wants to talk about the B2C stuff. So it's great to start with a B2B example. Fibre King's a client of ours. They're a 94-year-old, fourth-generation company. They've got a multi-million-dollar turnover, national footprint, and they make machines designed to replace human labour on production lines. So for a large brewing company, for example, they could provide the case packers that put cans and bottles into boxes, and then take the filled boxes that are sealed up and put them onto pallets so that they can go to transport, and they call that machine a palletizer. Right? Now the problem is you can only sell so many $1 million production line setups, right, to the big end of the market because there's only a handful of potential clients there, and you're building your brand around making gear that lasts 10 or 15 years, right? So it's not like you've got lots of replacements and upgrades that you can do. In recent growth in the beer market, which is one of their verticals, all of the growth has been in craft brewing, which actually reinvented in Colorado. Arguably, my Belgian friends would say they invented craft brewing, but everyone I met in Colorado when I was there said, no, we invented craft brewing. I think
right.
But that whole movement that started there has happened here in a big way. We've got more than 600 craft brewers and 400 distillers in Australia right now. Now, craft brewer is really similar to a major beer brewing company. It's just they operate at a way lower scale. Now, they typically only have one guy packing cases rather than a team of people packing cases at the end of the line. So if they buy a case packer, they're going to be looking at more than an 8-year payback, and economically that's just not viable then. So Fibre King needed to work out how to create an offer that could work for that nearby segment. So they know all about what the craft brewers are doing. It's just that it's a totally different scale, right? So their solution was to evolve their product actually by devolving it, and they built a thing called the Little Packer. Now, this is a slower and less flexible standard, standard case packer, but importantly, it's smaller, which fits with the craft brewer's footprint, but it's way cheaper. If it can save the craft brewer just one person on their line, they'll get a payback in just 2.5 years, and that's a totally different value proposition. Now, if you think about it, this isn't exactly an adjacent market position. Yeah, craft brewers are kind of beside their current target segment, and this product is not exactly what they sell now. It's a kind of evolved version of their product, and that's an adjacent market position. So pretty cool example. We like to talk to clients about that a lot because it sort of explains what we really love to do is find stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. So how about a B2C example?
Yeah. So we talked about a car insurance company here. These guys aren't a client of ours, but we admired so much of what they did accidentally that I really love it as an example. And it's good when you talk about other people because you're not betraying commercial and confident stuff for your client. Right. So I want to talk about NRMA. They're a really large car insurer here. And you can imagine, Greg, that COVID put them into emergency mode. So people aren't driving their cars because either they're locked down or they're just worried about the infection. Some of them are worried about losing their jobs. Some of them did lose their jobs. Plenty of them feel like, hey, maybe we need to cut back because the world's so uncertain. What are we going to do? And so, of course, when it came to renewing their comprehensive car insurance, many of them were they're opting out, right? Now, for NRMA, this is like a scary circumstance for them because the breadth of their book really matters to make sure that their business is profitable and viable and that they can cover all of their liabilities. So almost in desperation, what they did is they developed a last chance offer. And interestingly enough, it's a cut down product here. And what they really offered, they said, look, no commitment, month to month. We're just going to offer you a really low premium, but we're only going to cover fire, theft, and third-party property damage. That's all we're all going to cover. Now, and sure, they were happy in retaining a bunch of customers on this lower-level product, which was great. But what's really amazing is their inbound inquiry increased 500% when they released this product. And the reason it did is that they'd actually discovered a segment of the market nearby, the comprehensive insurance segment of the market, who'd always wanted this lower level, cheaper product covering, right? They'd always wanted this. Think about it. My car's not worth very much, so I don't really care about if I damage the car. If it's total, I can't afford to buy a new one, so I need to cover for that. If I crash into a BMW or a Mercedes, I really don't want to be on the hook for that. And that's the kind of car that maybe my first teenager gets, so that's the insurance, that I want to put on that. And so they found this adjacent market position almost by accident. Now, Lean CX had to do this on purpose, but I think it's really cool, right? So it's a pirate metric. We want to retain customers. We change our customer value proposition to do that. And then we discovered this nearby market segment that's been there all along. Car insurance is a massively overcrowded vertical, right? Been there all along, but no one's been offering the right product for it.
So let's switch gears a little bit here. Talk about your book, Lean CX: How to Differentiate at Low Cost and Least Risk. Why don't you talk a little bit about what did you want to achieve by writing the book? What was your goal?
Yeah, it's the same as, I guess it's the same thing when you kind of set a goal like this. You've kind of got a personal goal and a business goal. I suspect you guys are more interested in the business goal rather than the kind of personal therapy we were going through to get this thing out,
You can talk a little bit about each. That's fine.
I want to talk more about that. I want to talk more about the business stuff. I think it's more relevant, right? So we worked in customer experience for 10 years here in Australia, had done a lot of work in different agencies before we founded CapFeather. And while the clients were happy with the work that we did and they're really happy to pay and we had lots of repeat business, we just didn't feel that they were getting the value out of customer experience that they could be. And I want to give you an example of kind of one of the absolute coolest things that I had done, that I'd seen in the States. I'm sure you're aware of a company called T-Mobile. Okay. Now, these guys got us really interested in what CX could do because they grew from like 33 million customers to about 70 million customers in 5 years. And they talked about, being the carrier and making carrier moves. And it was all around CX. But at its core, it was two really simple things. One was not trying to extract as much profit out of their customers with a billion different rate plans and upgrade things and all the tricky little fine print and sneaky conditions and stuff. So that was one thing. And the second thing was just to reduce friction overall, whether it came to, inquiring about a new handset or getting on their network or getting support or whatever it is. They just wanted to lower friction. Now they did those things and got this amazing growth, and we hadn't seen customers in Australia be able to get that same kind of growth, right? And we're trying to work out, well, what's the difference? Is the difference that, Americans are different, or is the difference that, CX is something different in Australia, or is it different that something special about T-Mobile? And we started to have a think about and research seriously, what was the solution to this strategy problem, right? My market's crowded. How do I grow? Because in crowded markets, there are companies that still manage to grow. I mean, Amazon's the poster child for this. $3.7 billion 15 years ago has never grown at less than 20% a year, and some years has grown more than 40 every year, right? Now, you can't find a company in Australia in our stock market, in the 2,160 odd companies that are listed here. You can't find easily one of them that's of any size that's grown successfully, even 10%, 3 years in a row pre-COVID. And so when we wrote the book, we kind of suspected that, CX was the current way to solve that strategy problem of growth in a crowded market. And we wanted to get down our thoughts about how to do it. We want to take some of the thinking for 10 years and get them down on paper. And so that was really what we're trying to do. And I think we're pretty happy with the result, actually.
Yeah. What did you learn during the process of writing? I mean, you had a premise that you were going after, but what was some of the learning that happened during the process? The reality is striking. While we can stream movies on demand and order anything to our doorstep within a click, healthcare interactions often feel needlessly complex. Healthcare marketers, this one's for you. In Shop, Stream, Heal, author Adeline Ashley shares actionable insights from industry leaders like Netflix, Amazon, and Delta, showing how healthcare can thoughtfully adapt their winning strategies. This isn't about technology for technology's sake. It's about making healthcare more accessible, intuitive, and human. Drawing from real-world successes and lessons learned, the book shows you how to create healthcare experiences that truly meet patient needs while preserving clinical excellence. Shop, Stream, Heal by Adeline Ashley features a foreword from Dave O'Flanagan, CEO of Sitecore. It's published by the Agile brand and now available in print and digital formats on Amazon. Go to shopstreamheal.com for more information.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where, when I used to teach MBAs at business schools around the world, I said to them, look, I can save you 50 grand in 3 years by giving you the whole MBA in like 3 sentences. And they're like, what is it, right? So in the case of the MBA, it's like, well, the answer to any questions, it depends. The trick is knowing what it depends on. So there's some detail into that, but you'll get some of that. Nice. The second thing is that, if you want something done right, you probably need to do it yourself. But in any kind of organization, because you can't do that, don't expect too much. And that kind of explains the whole MBA. So I'm at risk of doing the same thing here. This is a gross simplification, Greg, but it is the kind of core thing that we learned. We found what we think is a formula for sustained growth. And it seems to have been pretty useful and pretty durable right now. Eventually it won't be durable, but right now this is the kind of way to do it. And here's the key bit, and this is going to shock some people. It's not about doing business as usual better. Okay, with all due respect to good to great and all that stuff that's out there. We spend more than a year looking at the large established companies with better than 10% growth top line, and the common formula we found has 5 bits to it. Okay, the first one is they were all growing through an improved and a superior customer experience, but it was not the tactical touchpoint stuff that they were doing. They were creating a superior value proposition, and sometimes that was an emotional value proposition, and sometimes it was a more fulfillment community-based value proposition, and sometimes it was actually just a hardcore, cost-effective economic benefit value proposition, right? Okay, but in every case, it was wrapped up in an experience. So that was the first thing. The second thing was they were delivering this by combining digital and human. And if I was to look at the big end of town in Australia right now, my biggest criticism is there's this idea that we're going to spend a fortune on upgrading our digital platform, remove humans from the process, and we're going to succeed by doing that. The problem is there's no differentiation in that. No one's worked out how to effectively differentiate a digital platform in a way that makes sense. I think my best example of that is, watching, I guess Snapchat managed to take some of Facebook's market after they kind of owned the market for social media, right? And so what we learned is that the second part is you have to combine digital and human to deliver that superior experience and value proposition. You couldn't just do it digital only, right? But digital was a part of it because it gave you a cost benefit you couldn't get otherwise. Now, if you think about what companies are doing, linking those together is non-trivial, right? You've got to have some experts, on the kind of coding autism side and some experts on the kind of human empathy side, and you've got to link them together, right? The third thing is that we always found the growth didn't come from the existing target segments with the same product. Either they found this nearby set of, it wasn't foreign customers, but it was nearby customers that they weren't serving. And it was an offer that was evolved from their current offer, right? And this is really important. Sometimes they did both, right? But they were kind of doing that stuff. And that meant the fourth thing, they were creating this in the middle innovation. It's kind of like the idea of a Goldilocks zone, yeah? If you go closer to the sun than the earth, it's too hot to have life. And if you go further out, it's too cold. There's this kind of zone just in the middle, not too hot, not too cold. We found it's the same with innovation, right? It had to be more than an incremental BAU uplift, but it had to be less than the kind of moonshot, which gets all of the kind of successful credit stuff, and this in the middle zone mattered. And then the last bit is you had to be prepared to test this in market on a small pilot, right, to prove that you're going to get cut through, to prove you're going to get your customers to take it up and you could get value out of it before you scaled. And so that was why the lean part of this became critically important. It was the only way that we could kind of disarm that corporate immune system to say, hey, no, look, we've got the evidence, we've got the numbers on a small scale to say this is worth doing in a bigger way. And yeah, we get it that it's different, right? It's not just an incremental change here, but it's not a moonshot. We could actually do this. We've already proven that we can on a small scale. Now let's scale it, right? Now that formula, improve your CX with a superior value proposition, combine digital and human, target a nearby customer segments, not your current customers, with an evolved product. Make sure that the level of change you're doing is not a moonshot, but it's a bit more than incremental. It's somehow in the middle, and test it first. That's the formula. Now we write in a lot more detail how to do that cleverly, but that's what we learned.
I know the book was recently published, but is there anything in your recent experience in the last few months that you wish you would have added, or you're going to put in the second edition, or anything like that, just based on recent events and everything like that? So
we started kind of doing in the last chapter of the book this idea about swarms as a way of thinking about strategy, and I really don't want to make everyone think that I'm that I'm a weirdo and I'm freaky. It was a kind of a vision about what might be the way to move forward. Surprisingly, what we found in the meantime is that COVID kind of has upended everything for a bunch of our customers. And what's really strange about COVID is that it kind of proves some stuff that I already knew, even though you might think that it's an unprecedented situation. So I've never seen a situation where times are so good that some people aren't losing their shirt. And I haven't ever seen a situation where times are so bad that some people aren't making a fortune, right? Now, we broadly got three postures of customers here. Some of them are trying to hide from the COVID impacts and they're just trying to hunker down until it's over. Some of them are going, well, let's just wait for things to change and then we can act, because things are going to change and we don't know how they're going to change, so let's wait. And then there's a third group that are going, hey, everything's changing right now. This is the best opportunity we've got to steal a march on our competitors. And the most important thing that I didn't realize when we were writing the book is actually COVID really doesn't matter, right? It's not the outside world that actually matters from what we've seen with companies that are successful. It's not whether it's been a help or a hindrance for their business. It's actually whether or not internally the management team felt that this was an opportunity. Because the teams that thought it was an opportunity, they actually turned it into an opportunity. And so Fiber King, that company I was telling you about, the packaging machine, they've grown 220% in the last 2 years. COVID doesn't particularly help them or hinder them. their infant formula manufacturers are way down, but their craft brewers, as we said, are way up. They just found out where the opportunity was and pursued it and built a better experience to get access to that.
Well, one last question before we wrap up. What's a resource you recommend besides your book? I definitely recommend people buy your book, but what's a resource you recommend that the audience reads, watches, listens in order to learn more about what we're talking about?
So one of CapFeather's satellite companies is called the CX Institute, and you can find us on the web at cx.institute. If listeners on the podcast going / to Lean CX, all one word, so cx.institute / Lean CX. We've got a training program there that they can have a look at. It's for those of you that need to do it in really serious detail and want to take months to get through Lean CX, great. Please go and buy the book and knock yourself out. But for those of you that want it way faster and you want to have worked examples and you want to be able to get through it and apply it directly to your business, we built this training course to just give people an option. So if you're a different kind of learner, then jump on. I've done a bunch of videos on there about how to do Lean CX. We've got a whole bunch of worked exercises and you can apply it directly to your own business. And at the end of that, we'll certify you as part of the CX Institute as a Lean CX practitioner so you can add something to your resume. But way more important than that, you can pick up the skill set to do Lean CX if you're a professional in this area in some hours of videos,
That's great. Well, Robert, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with you and what you're doing?
CapFeather itself has a thing called the CapFeather Edition. It's a free publication. We talk about customer experience. We talk about digital innovation. We talk about customer strategy, and we have new articles every month that come out on that. Love for customers to do that. You can drop me a line at CapFeather.global if you want to have a conversation. Would love to help. But most importantly, the best thing I'd love to see is I'd love to interact with some of your listeners' companies someday and just have a better experience. That would just be the most awesome thing to get out of this.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Robert Du, a partner at CapFeather Global, for joining the show. Please keep this conversation going by following the Agile World on LinkedIn, and then you can ask questions and commenting on our post about this episode, and we'll interact with you there. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.